Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's so nice to see so many of you on this call. For anyone that hasn't worked with Live and Breathe before, we're a creative agency that's committed to doing whatever it takes for ambitious brands to do more for be more for their audiences. We have a specialist social team led by myself and Rach that focuses on pinpointing conversation opportunities across social channels and engineering content that effectively capitalizes on them. So quick intros, I'm Shauna, I'm Senior Social Media Manager on the team, and I look after all things on the social and content side of things, and I've worked in social for the past 8 years.
And I'm Rachel, and I look after the influencer marketing side of things, and also over 8 years experience in social, PR and influencer. And collectively, we've worked on clients like Morrison's, Nutmeg Clothing, Real Techniques, The Happy Egg Co., helping them create long-term brand awareness with social and influencer content. And today we're going to be talking about our secrets to social success. And if you've got any questions throughout, there is a Q&A section at the top, and there'll be 10 minutes at the end of our webinar for you to ask any questions that you may have.
Thank you. So we'll start off with the challenge, or one of the biggest challenges that brands are facing on social media at the moment, and that is the fact that the average brand posts 3,650 times a year. So that means that your content is one out of billions of posts fighting for attention. Brands are dominating our social feeds, and there are so many brands getting it right and seeing big payoffs from it. So it's not a surprise that everyone else wants a piece of that pie. But at the same time, audience attention spans are getting shorter, trends are moving faster, and the pressure to churn out content quickly and regularly is at an all-time high. But also, the more posts that we add to the mix, the bigger the competition for attention.
But consumers are tuning out, with 52% of social media users stating that they're actually exhausted by self-promotional content. So our customers are actively hiding or unfollowing brands who are now posting inauthentic content. So one example to be aware of is ungenuine partnerships with influencers, not allowing influencers to have any creative control. So followers see it as an ad, and almost like they're following a script. And social content like this can lead to 44% of users unfollowing brands.
Also, excessively self-promoting. So last year, 34% of social users unfollowed a brand that were perhaps maybe just reposting their above the line ads to their socials, or got too many graphical posts with big price roundels and offers, or too many calls to actions to purchase on every post.
And lastly, not interacting with your community on social media can lead to 32% to press that unfollow button. This is why that daily community management with your audience is so important. So replying to those comments, the DMs which your customers are sending you, and getting involved in relevant conversations online. So becoming a voice, listening and caring for your followers is vital for brand growth on social. And this can actually lead to some of the best social content to help build a loyal community online.
Other reasons that social media audiences stated were things like overusing memes or social trends, ignoring negative or challenging comments and not facing them head on, or simply just trying too hard to gain attention. The key to gaining attention is actually simple. Success on social is just about being human. As brands, we need to remember that we're just talking to real people, and real people know real content when they see it.
So today we're going to break down 3 of our strategies which we follow for social success, with the first one being influencer marketing. So use influencers who already love your brand or are using your products and services. With 69% of consumers state that they trust the recommendations that influencers give them for new products or services. This is a result of choosing influencers who have built a large amount of trust with their followers, and social media has made it possible for influencers to become like friends, connecting deeply with their followers, and connecting with people who sense them with a sense of familiarity through sharing their personalities online with the relatable content and conversation.
I feel like I can definitely relate to that. Like, it's so hard to kind of stop yourself or remember that you're not actually best friends with your favorite influencers. I feel like when we met a couple of influencers at an event that we work with quite a lot, it was like I was holding myself back not to ask how the kids were and how they were getting on with the house move, because I had to remind myself that they had only just met me, but I felt like I knew them.
It's not just the influencers we work with, there's ones we personally follow on there, and we were trying to hold back asking them how their trip to Paris was. But we didn't ask them in the end. But you must be confident sourcing influencers. You can't just work with them because you like them. You need to check that they advocate well for the brand, to ensure that you build trust, loyalty, and that brand warmth. Working with influencers to create content that emotionally connects consumers to your brand's product or service by selling an unmissable experience. But there's so many different types of influencers out there. It's really hard to put influencer marketing into best practice for the best results, especially when influencer marketing can tarnish a brand when it's not done properly. But the best way to execute influencer marketing is to work with influencers who already have that pre-existing love for your product or service. And our client Nutmeg is a good example of this. We've built a brand ambassador roster of micro and nano influencers who have become the faces and personalities of Nutmeg's Instagram. The influencers we work with all have a genuine love for Nutmeg products. They share content organically and have become natural brand advocates for the clothing, sharing that great awareness and the encouraging footfall to stores. So it's really great when we get comments like, I'm going to put this on my shopping list. I need to pay a visit ASAP. This one is my personal favourite. Wow, off to go buy milk with the little googly eye emoji. And definitely going to have to make a trip after seeing this. So influencers are seen as real people and they're seen like friends, as we've previously mentioned, and followers trust the recommendations that they're giving them about the Nutmeg products, so the high quality and the affordability. Plus, followers can actually see what the clothes look like styled on a real person. I know I love it when I see influencers doing the try-on hauls at the moment, and you can see what the clothes actually look like on, giving you inspiration on how to style certain outfits for certain occasions. So there's so many autumnal outfits I'm seeing and love at the moment. I want so many cozy jumpers, and of course, UGG season is back. So I know exactly how to style the boots as I've been influenced. With Nutmeg, we also did influencer content showing what the clothing looked like on the hanger versus what the clothing looked like styled on, and followers are commenting saying how amazing the products looked on in comparison to just on the hanger. So giving users that inspiration as they look completely different on, making the product more relatable, especially when it's placed in a lifestyle setting too. And this year, our influencer content for Nutmeg has generated great awareness to our key target audiences, despite working with the smaller sized influencers with follower counts from 5,000 to 30,000 followers. But every month, the influencer content continues to be our highest performing posts, with the influencer partnerships gaining over 363,000 views, over 6,000 meaningful engagements, and a high engagement rate, average engagement rate of 2.31%, which is way above the fashion industry average of 1.59% on Instagram, and also a really low average cost per engagement of 86p. So this just shows how cost effective working with smaller influencers can be. So if you're looking for the higher engagement rate, it's super beneficial to pull together a roster of nano and micro influencers who will share content throughout the year during key calendar events to really help promote your brand's product and services. But a good place to start is sourcing influencers who already have that love for your brand. They use your product. So the partnerships look genuine and are genuine in today's oversaturated market.
Our second ingredient to our recipe for social success is to make the trends, don't copy, or at least make them your own. So if anyone's algorithm is the same as mine, you'll know that this summer was a Brat summer. 21 million videos were made about Brat summer this year. A huge proportion of those posts being made by brands like Kate Spade, Adenola, Duolingo, and Glossier. But when the brands that were talking about the trend were the complete opposite of what Brat represents, some content came across less relatable and more like jumping on the bandwagon. The key for us when talking about trends as a brand is to focus on adding value to the audience rather than just being a part of that conversation. So we always say, take off your brand hat and step into your human shoes. Does the trend make sense for your brand? Are you bringing anything new to the table amongst the thousands of other brands that have done the same thing? This kind of content does work when it's done right. 72% of Gen Z say that they are more likely to remember a brand that has an engaging presence on social media, but the content that cuts through are the ones that are bringing something new, funny, or relatable to the table rather than just copying what everyone else is doing for the sake of being part of the conversation. A brand that we think is doing this really nicely at the moment is Cult Beauty. They're a British beauty brand. They're getting thousands of views on their best performing posts, and they focus less on the trend and more on showing the audience that they understand them, simply just using trends or moments to support this and weave in their products naturally. So this first example on the left plays on that popular format of recording Teams meetings, which in itself is like that exclusive brand warmth builder, and it gives the audience inside access to the behind the scenes. But they've made it their own to authentically weave in their products. We were talking about this earlier in the week when we were rehearsing for the webinar, and it got a little chuckle, which is exactly the type of reaction we should be aiming to get out of this type of content. And it's a lot more likely on something unique like this than the 13th Apple dance your audience has seen that day. The second example, I definitely feel very seen by. Again, it weaves in their products naturally, but prioritizes relatability. It recognizes that they understand the consumer right down to that little trick you do when you can't remember your left and right. All of these small details help your brand become more human and make audiences feel seen. And it's definitely a strategy that can work on that old school, still meme style of content. Because it's like showing your audience that even though you are a brand, you too think like them.
And then our third strategy is that real people are your biggest brand advocates. With 79% of people being influenced to purchase by user-generated content and employee-generated content, stating they've bought or contemplated buying something after seeing it posted by their social connections.
And the good news is you already have the tools to do this for free. Your brand has access to a pool of brand advocates fully equipped to talk about your brand and drive social proof. Your customers, for example, have tried, tested, and loved your product, and your colleagues know the ins and outs about what makes your brand special.
So putting them at the face of your content could be the thing that makes your brand stand out and convert. So allowing audiences to build a connection with the faces they see on their screen and build trust with your brand and your customers. So ultimately leading to greater chance of conversion.
A brand doing this really nicely at the moment is Joe and the Juice. They've got over 200k followers on TikTok, thousands of views on every video, and an influx of comments engaging with the brand like they're a friend. They're really leading the way with employee-generated content and have them feature in the majority of their videos to educate about products and new releases and boost brand warmth with their funny content. And it's worth noting as well, I don't think this necessarily is just a B2C format. With many B2B brands, they use faces to soften their messaging and make it more engaging. And it is a strategy that I relied on quite heavily when I was working in B2B financial services.
And companies that create and share employee-generated content, like Joe and the Juice, can extend their organic reach by 200% and increase profitability by 23%. But this is really hard to do. Me and Shauna were filming the other week, and Shauna looked a bit grumpy because she forgot she was on camera. But practice makes perfect, and the more you do it, the more you get used to creating employee-generated content. So the proof is in the pudding that all these strategies will help you build longer term results and engage audiences.
So you might have seen a graph like this before. It is giving Byron Sharp, but it is a really good example of how human to human marketing can help with social media marketing.
So you can see the yellow line on the graph. This shows how human-to-human brand building sees greater sales results over time. And these kind of posts are the posts that add value to followers by humanizing content. So this content should be a priority for brands to see that long-term sales uplift. Whereas compared to the purple line in the graph, which is the brand sale activation posts with those direct call to actions to purchase, really pushing people to buy product. And you can see that the content only sees those short bursts of growth. So it's best to focus on the yellow line with human to human brand building exercises, so you will see better results.
As we know, return on investment on organic social takes time, but it's definitely not impossible, and it is worth it in the long run with that continuous long-term sales growth. So success on social is pretty simple. I think what we need to do is just stop overthinking and commit to humanizing your brand, and the remarkable results will follow. You, as a human, are in the best position to humanize your brand. The key is to just stop thinking like a brand and think more like the person viewing your content.
And after you've done this, you'll naturally start to see the engagement rates rise as your brand becomes much more likable, and with your memorable and unique personalities, which you're sharing on your socials. And ultimately, this will lead to conversations and long-term sales uplifts. So if you follow our 3 steps to social success, you'll be on the right track to humanizing your brand. So firstly, by using influencers that already have a love for your brand.
And making the trends and not copying by prioritizing your audience feel seen over anything else.
And finally, use the people you already have access to and really focus and prioritize on sharing user-generated content and employee-generated content.
But this is only just the beginning. We've not revealed all of our secrets just yet. I definitely don't think we could fit those into 20 minutes. There's still so much more to think about. And most of those things are really quick wins with big impacts.
So thanks for listening. We're Rachel and Shauna. Don't forget to add us on LinkedIn by scanning our QR codes to continue the conversation. As Shauna says, that we can't really fit everything into 20 minutes as we've got so many secrets to social success. But for now, we've got 10 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, we'd love to answer them. Just go to the Q&A section. Oh, this is a good one. So how do you encourage employees to be involved in content? We beg them. I'm joking. Well, we do have to ask them, obviously, to be involved with a few pretty pleasers. But the best ways to encourage employees to be involved in content is to educate them on the reasons and the benefits of employee-generated content, and showing them the content ideas you want them to be involved in, kind of easing them in. And say that it's not that scary. And once a few colleagues are involved, it's kind of a snowball effect and people feel like they're missing out and want to be involved in it more. Second one. How can brands use these strategies for paid channels?
I think for paid especially, I think the key to humanizing your paid channels is just kind of take as many learnings as you can from organic and really see them as 2 channels that can work together rather than opposing formats. We found with clients like Morrison's that actually when we use this kind of like typically organic content on paid, we've seen an uplift in results on both channels. So I think, yeah, it's about starting to think of them as kind of the same medium. I saw a really nice example actually by the brand Shreddy earlier in the week, where they humanized their ads by doing like a fake iMessage conversation. So they were talking about an awards credential that they'd put in one of the messages, and then the replies were like really human, using their audience's kind of online slang words, and then they had a link to purchase the product they were talking about in that.
And then What's the best way for smaller brands to find authentic influencers? Is it just a case of searching through, or are there platforms that can help you make a selection? So it all comes down to that daily community management, which we mentioned throughout the webinar. So spotting influencers who are tagging and talking about your brand already on social media, telling their followers how much they love them. And then this is when we outreach to them, and when we begin conversations. But if an influencer is talking about your brand, it's also important to do other vital checks, like you need to check if they've got high engagement, if their profile growth is increasing as well, to check that the influencers are still relevant, and also check that people are liking and commenting. You can't just work with an influencer because they like your brand. You have to check that they've got a high engagement rate. There are tools that you can use also to find influencers, which we use religiously and can't live without it, by doing specific discovery searches, which we find really handy, especially when campaigns are so niche. Quite a few questions. What's your least authentic content trend of the year so far, and why is it so bad?
I definitely think Brat and Apple has, well, it started to die a death and then she's making a bit of a comeback with her remix album. But that whole like Apple dance, I was just kind of sick of seeing and hearing about by the end of it. And I think every time I saw a brand then try and talk about it, it just felt a little bit like, oh, like cringy. I think that and the very demure.
Everyone's jumping on that, aren't they? And then last one, do you think it's more difficult for a bigger influencer to create authentic content? No, you've just got to check that they are loving your product, and it's not seen as an ad. However, bigger influencers come with a larger fee, so it depends what business and budgets are. But then you tend to work with the smaller influencers to generate the mass awareness, which larger influencers do get. But I think, yeah, if they still love, you've got to really search if they love your product, for it to obviously be authentic and not just seen as an ad, because consumers are so savvy now. But if you do the important checks, authentic content can be possible with bigger influencers. Just check if we've got any more. How do you balance giving your influencers creative control but ensuring it's delivering the right message? So we brief every single influencer, and we pull together a document which isn't scripted. It's just like kind of outlining what the campaign is, and we discuss like via email what the content will look like. Obviously, it has to get signed off to a certain point, but we would never ever give influencers a script to follow, because it just wouldn't get great results. Engagement would be low, and that's really what you need to avoid when you're needing that reach for campaigns. But obviously, we give them a brief, but it's just not scripted at all. There's do's and don'ts, obviously, as well, to not share any political views or anything. And then, do you think that videos with your own voice is real enough, or do you think you have to show your face in the videos?
I think definitely, and I don't think it's great to have a face in a video. And I think even before video content was like the core format on social, that's always been a best performing piece of content. I remember when my first ever job, any kind of image that we used, the closer up the face to the photo, the better it performed. But as I was saying in the other question with the Shreddy reference, I think there's ways that you can be more human without having your face in it, even if it's just like the language that you use in your community management, or like you say, with voiceovers too.
I think that's it for questions. But we've got our LinkedIn, which we shared in the webinar. So if you've got any more questions and you'd like to continue the conversation, please do get in touch because we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.